The waiting room smelled like lavender and lies. I sat in the overstuffed armchair, my hands gripping the armrests so hard my knuckles had gone white, trying to remember the breathing exercises I'd learned from YouTube videos at 3 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come and my chest felt like it was caving in. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. My husband, Marcus, sat across from me, scrolling through his phone with the kind of casual indifference that had become his default mode around me. He hadn't looked up once in the 12 minutes we'd been sitting here. I knew it was 12 minutes because I'd been watching the clock on the wall, watching the second hand make its slow circuit, each tick a small eternity. "You're doing it again," Marcus said without lifting his eyes from his screen. "Doing what?" "That breathing thing. It's loud." I pressed my lips together and tried to breathe more quietly, which of course made my chest tighten more, which made everything worse. The familiar sensation started creeping up my spine, that electric, feeling like my body was preparing for something terrible, some nameless catastrophe that existed only in my nervous system. Not here. "Please not here. Mr. and Mrs. Chen," a voice called from the doorway. "Dr. Morrison will see you now." Marcus stood immediately, pocketing his phone with the efficiency of someone checking off a task. "Marriage counseling. Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. Right between his meeting with the regional managers and his racquetball game with Todd from accounting. I stood more slowly, willing my legs to feel solid beneath me. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with abstract paintings in muted tones, the kind of art designed to be inoffensive and forgettable. We followed the receptionist past several closed doors, each with a small nameplate, until she stopped at one near the end. "Right through here," she smiled, her expression professionally warm and entirely impersonal. The door opened into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. There was a large desk pushed against one wall, 2 comfortable-looking couches arranged in an L shape, and a single leather chair positioned to face both. And sitting in that chair, holding a leather-bound notebook and wearing reading glasses I'd never seen her use before, was Dr. Catherine Morrison. Formerly Catherine Chen. Formerly my supervisor at Meridian Consulting Group. Formerly the woman who had sat across from me in a conference room 4 years ago and told me that my emotional volatility was incompatible with the high-pressure environment of management consulting, and that perhaps I should consider a career path that was less demanding. The notebook slipped from her hands. For just a fraction of a second, so brief that Marcus probably didn't even notice, her composed professional mask cracked. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. Then, like watching someone pull a shade down over a window, the expression vanished. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," she said smoothly, recovering so quickly I might have imagined that moment of recognition. "Please come in. Make yourselves comfortable." My legs had stopped working. I stood frozen in the doorway, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. Catherine Morrison. Kate. The woman who had destroyed my career, who had written in my termination paperwork that I was unable to handle constructive criticism without becoming emotionally dysregulated. The woman whose signature had ended my 6-year trajectory at one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the country. "Sweetheart?" Marcus touched my elbow, his voice carrying that edge of impatience he tried to disguise as concern. "You okay?" The question snapped me back. I moved into the room on autopilot, sinking onto the couch Marcus had chosen. He sat close, enough that anyone watching would think we were united, but far enough that our bodies didn't touch. The careful distance of 2 people who'd forgotten how to be near each other. Kate, Dr. Morrison, settled back into her chair with the kind of practiced ease that comes from seeing couples in crisis every day. She crossed her legs, positioned her notebook on her lap, and gave us both a professional smile that revealed nothing. "Thank you both for coming today," she began. "I know taking this step can be difficult, but it shows real commitment to your relationship. Before we dive in, I want to establish some ground rules. This is a safe space for both of you to express your feelings and concerns. Everything said here is confidential. My role is not to take sides, but to help facilitate honest communication and understanding between you." She was looking at Marcus as she spoke, her attention focused on him in a way that felt deliberate, as if by not looking at me, she could somehow erase the fact that we knew each other, that she knew things about me Marcus didn't, that she had seen me at my absolute worst. "That sounds good," Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. He always did this when he wanted to make a good impression, the lean, the earnest eye contact, the subtle nod. I'd watched him deploy it with clients, with his boss, with the parents at our neighborhood barbecues. "We really appreciate you fitting us in on such short notice." "Of course." Dr. Morrison's pen moved across her notebook. "Why don't we start with what brought you here today? Marcus, would you like to begin?" I wanted to interrupt, wanted to say something, anything, to address the massive elephant in the room. But what would I say? "Oh, by the way, your therapist is the person who fired me and contributed significantly to the mental health issues we're here to discuss?" That seemed like a great way to derail the session before it even started. And there was something else, something that kept my mouth shut. A small, traitorous part of me that wondered if maybe this was exactly what needed to happen. If maybe having someone who already knew my history, who had already witnessed my failures, might actually cut through all the pretense faster. Or maybe I was just too scared to speak. "Well," Marcus began, settling into his narrative with the same confidence he brought to his quarterly presentations, "I think we're here because Emma has been struggling lately, and it's starting to affect our relationship. I want to be supportive, I really do, but I'm not sure how to help when I don't fully understand what's happening." Dr. Morrison nodded, her pen moving. "Can you tell me more about what you mean by struggling?" "She has these episodes." Marcus glanced at me and I saw something flash across his face. Not quite contempt, but close. "Panic attacks," she calls them. They happen at random times, and when they do, everything has to stop. Whatever we're doing, wherever we are, it all has to revolve around managing her crisis. The way he said crisis, with those little air quotes implied even though his hand stayed in his lap, made my stomach clench. "And how often would you say these episodes occur?" Dr. Morrison asked. "It varies. Sometimes a few times a week, sometimes more. Last month she had one at my company dinner. We had to leave early." He shook his head. "My boss's wife thought she was drunk." "I wasn't drunk," I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since entering the room, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. "I told you. I couldn't breathe. The room was too hot and there were too many people and... See, this is what I'm talking about," Marcus interrupted, turning to Dr. Morrison as if I'd just perfectly illustrated his point. "It's always something. The room's too hot, too cold, too crowded, too quiet. There's always a reason why she can't handle a completely normal situation that everyone else is managing just fine." My fingernails dug into my palms. The familiar tightness started spreading across my chest. That feeling like someone was wrapping steel bands around my rib cage and pulling them tighter and tighter. "Not now. Please, God, not now." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Emma," Dr. Morrison said, and hearing her say my name after 4 years felt surreal. "What's your experience of these episodes?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. How could I explain it to someone who had already decided, years ago, that my anxiety was a character flaw rather than a condition? How could I make her understand when she'd literally written in my file that my inability to regulate emotions made me unsuitable for professional work? There. I started, then stopped, tried again. It feels like dying, like my body has decided that something terrible is about to happen, and it doesn't matter that my brain knows I'm safe. My heart races so fast I think it might explode. I can't get enough air. My hands go numb, and there's this sense of absolute dread, like something catastrophic is coming and I'm powerless to stop it. Dramatic, Marcus muttered. Dr. Morrison's head turned sharply toward him. What was that? Nothing. He shifted on the couch. It's just, look, I'm not saying she doesn't feel things. I'm saying the reaction is disproportionate to whatever triggered it. That's attention-seeking behavior, right? When someone reacts with maximum drama to minor inconveniences? The room went very quiet. Even the ambient city noise from outside seemed to fade away. I sat frozen, my husband's words hanging in the air between us like poison gas, attention-seeking. He'd said it. Actually said it out loud to a professional, as if it were an established fact, rather than a cruel dismissal of something that made me feel like I was dying. That's an interesting choice of words, Marcus, Dr. Morrison said slowly. Her voice had changed, become cooler, more analytical. Can you help me understand what leads you to that conclusion? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Marcus spread his hands as if the logic were self-evident. These attacks always seem to happen at convenient times. When we're supposed to go somewhere she doesn't want to go. When she needs to do something she's been avoiding. When I'm focused on something else and she wants attention. The pattern is pretty clear. You think I choose this? The words burst out of me before I could stop them. You think I want to feel like I'm having a heart attack? Like the walls are closing in? Like I'm going to die right there in front of everyone? I think you've learned that it gets you out of uncomfortable situations, Marcus said, his tone patient in a way that made me want to scream. And I think that on some level, maybe not even consciously, you use it to control situations. To control me, I couldn't breathe. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were talking about my panic attacks, and I was having one. My vision started to narrow at the edges. The room felt too bright, too hot. My skin felt too tight for my body. Emma. Dr. Morrison's voice cut through the rising panic. Emma, look at me. I forced my eyes to focus on her. She was leaning forward in her chair, her expression intent. I want you to do something for me, she said. I want you to put your feet flat on the floor. Feel the ground beneath you. Can you do that? I nodded, pressing my feet into the carpet. Good. Now, tell me 5 things you can see in this room. My throat felt too tight. The window. Your notebook. The lamp. The painting. Marcus's watch. Excellent. 4 things you can touch. My hands moved automatically. The couch. My jeans, my hair. The cushion. 3 things you can hear. I listened past my pounding heart. Traffic outside. The air conditioning. Someone walking in the hallway. 2 things you can smell. Lavender. Coffee. 1 thing you can taste. Copper. I bit my tongue. The panic hadn't disappeared, but it had receded enough that I could breathe again. I looked at Dr. Morrison, at Kate, and saw something in her eyes that confused me. It almost looked like guilt. That's a grounding technique, Marcus said flatly. She knows about those. She has apps for this stuff. She just doesn't use them. Actually, Dr. Morrison said, her voice taking on a sharp edge I remembered from her days as my supervisor. What I just witnessed was a genuine anxiety response being triggered by dismissive language about a serious mental health condition. Emma wasn't seeking attention, Marcus. She was experiencing real physiological symptoms of panic. Marcus's face hardened. With all due respect, doctor, you've known us for about 15 minutes. I've lived with her for 6 years. I think I know the difference between a medical emergency and a performance. Do you? Dr. Morrison set her notebook aside. Tell me, Marcus, what do you know about panic disorder? I know what Emma's told me, and what I've read online when I've tried to understand this. And what have you concluded from your research? That it's treatable, that there are medications, therapies, coping strategies. That plenty of people manage it without having their entire lives revolve around it. He looked at me, and there was something cold in his eyes I'd never seen before. That some people use it as an excuse to avoid responsibility. You think I'm avoiding responsibility? My voice came out as a whisper. I think you quit your job 4 years ago and haven't worked since. I think you spend most days at home saying you're too anxious to leave the house. I think I work 60-hour weeks to support us both while you see doctors and therapists who never seem to actually fix anything. His voice was rising now. All the resentment he'd apparently been storing finally spilling out. I think I'm exhausted, Emma. I think I signed up to be a husband, not a caretaker. The words landed like physical blows, each one hitting a place that was already bruised. Dr. Morrison stood abruptly. I think we need to take a break. What? Why? Marcus looked genuinely confused. I thought we were supposed to be honest here. That's what you said. This is a safe space for honest communication. Honesty doesn't mean cruelty. Marcus. Dr. Morrison moved to the small table in the corner where a water pitcher sat with several glasses. She poured one and brought it to me. Emma, drink this. I took the glass with shaking hands. The water was cold, shocking against my throat. I want to establish something very clearly, Dr. Morrison said, returning to her chair but not sitting down. She stood there, arms crossed, looking more like the executive consultant I'd known than a therapist. Panic disorder is a recognized medical condition. It's not attention-seeking behavior. It's not weakness. It's not something people choose or use to manipulate others. It's a dysfunction of the fear response system, and it causes real, measurable physiological symptoms. I understand that, Marcus started. I'm not finished. Her voice cut across his like a blade. What I heard from you just now was a series of dismissive, harmful statements that fundamentally mischaracterize your wife's condition. Whether you intended it or not, you're adding to her distress rather than supporting her recovery. Marcus's jaw tightened. So this is going to be one of those sessions where the husband is automatically the bad guy? Where everything is my fault? This is going to be a session where we deal in facts rather than assumptions. Dr. Morrison sat down again, but her posture was rigid. Emma, I'd like to hear your side of things. In your own words, what's been happening? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to figure out what game we were playing. She hadn't acknowledged that she knew me, hadn't mentioned Meridian Consulting Group, was pretending we were meeting for the first time. But she was defending me. The woman who had fired me for being too emotional was now telling my husband that my panic attacks were valid. The cognitive dissonance made my head spin. I don't know where to start, I said honestly. Start with the job, Marcus said. Tell her why you really quit Meridian. My blood turned to ice. I what? You always say you left because of burnout or because the environment was toxic, but that's not the whole story, is it? Dr. Morrison's expression had gone very still. Her pen was poised above her notebook, but she wasn't writing. You were fired, Marcus continued, and I could hear the triumph in his voice, like he'd finally gotten to deploy his trump card. You've let everyone think you quit for your mental health, but you were actually terminated for performance issues. I found the paperwork last month when I was looking for our tax returns. Termination for cause, dated March 15th, 4 years ago. The room tilted. He knew. All this time I'd thought my secret was safe and he'd known. Is that true, Emma? Dr. Morrison asked quietly. I couldn't look at her. Couldn't look at either of them. Yes, and you didn't tell me, Marcus said. 6 months into our relationship, you told me you were quitting your job because you needed a break. You let me support you financially, let me believe I was helping you recover from stress, when really you'd been fired and couldn't get another job. That's not... My voice cracked. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? Marcus demanded. Explain it to me because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I've been lied to for 4 years. Like our entire marriage is built on a lie. Dr. Morrison held up a hand. Marcus, I need you to take a breath. We're getting into some significant territory here, and I want to make sure we approach it carefully. Carefully? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been careful for 4 years. I've been patient and understanding and supportive. I've paid for every therapy session, every medication, every doctor's visit. I've rearranged my life around her limitations. And now I find out the whole thing started with a lie. I was ashamed, I said, the words barely audible. I didn't know how to tell you that I'd failed, that I wasn't the person you thought I was. So you just didn't? You let me believe a false version of events for our entire marriage? The termination was wrongful, I said, looking up at Dr. Morrison. Let her deny it. Let her sit there and defend what she'd done. I was fired for having panic attacks at work, for being emotionally volatile. They called it performance issues, but what they really meant was that I was inconvenient, that my mental health made them uncomfortable. Dr. Morrison's face had gone pale. Emma, you knew about this? Marcus turned to her, confusion written across his features. How could you possibly— I didn't, Dr. Morrison said quickly. Too quickly. I'm trying to understand the timeline here. Emma, did you pursue any legal recourse? If you felt the termination was discriminatory, against one of the biggest consulting firms in the country? With what money? What lawyer? I was standing now, my voice rising. They had me sign an NDA as part of my severance package. I couldn't even talk about what happened without risking a lawsuit that would have bankrupted me. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Dr. Morrison looked like she might be sick. And I stood there, 4 years of secrets and shame finally exposed in the worst possible way. I think, Dr. Morrison said slowly, that we need to pause here. This is clearly bringing up a lot of complex emotions for both of you, and no. I was surprised by the firmness in my own voice. No more pausing. No more pretending. You want honesty? Let's be completely honest. I turned to Dr. Morrison, and this time I didn't look away. Tell him, I said. Tell Marcus who you are. She went completely still. Emma, I don't think— Tell him that you were my supervisor at Meridian. Tell him that you're the one who fired me. Tell him that you wrote in my termination paperwork that I was emotionally unstable and unsuitable for professional work. Marcus's head swiveled between us. What? Dr. Morrison stood slowly, her professional composure cracking like thin ice. I think we should tell him. The words came out as a shout. Tell him that you knew exactly who I was the moment we walked through that door. Tell him that you've been sitting here, pretending to be neutral, when you're the reason I lost my career in the first place. Is this true? Marcus was on his feet now, too. You fired my wife? Dr. Morrison's mouth opened and closed. For the first time since I'd known her, first as a supervisor, now as a therapist, she looked completely at a loss. She started. Yes, but it's more complicated than— Complicated? I laughed, and the sound was slightly unhinged even to my own ears. You destroyed my career. You made it impossible for me to work in my field. You put in writing that I was too emotional, too unstable, too much of a liability. And then you became a therapist? You, of all people, decided to help people with mental health issues? Emma, please sit down. Dr. Morrison's voice had shifted into something I recognized, the tone she'd used in our final meeting at Meridian. Firm but kind, the voice of someone who knows they have all the power and is graciously choosing not to wield it cruelly. You're getting upset, and I think if we could just— Don't. The word came out sharp as a knife. Don't tell me I'm getting upset. Don't use that voice like I'm some kind of unstable person who needs to be managed. I have every right to be upset right now. What the hell is going on? Marcus looked between us. Someone needs to explain what's happening here. Dr. Morrison sank back into her chair. Her hands were trembling slightly, a detail I noticed with vicious satisfaction. Good. Let her feel a fraction of what I'd felt. 4 years ago, she said quietly, I was the director of operations at Meridian Consulting Group. Emma worked under me as a senior consultant. She was brilliant at her job, one of the best analysts we had. But she was also dealing with significant anxiety issues that were beginning to impact her performance. That's one version, I said. Emma had a panic attack during a client presentation. Dr. Morrison continued, ignoring me. It was a high-stakes pitch, millions of dollars on the line. She froze in front of the entire room, couldn't continue. The clients were uncomfortable. We lost the account. Marcus was looking at me, and I could see him recalculating everything he thought he knew. After that, Dr. Morrison said, there were other incidents. Emma missing meetings because she was too anxious to leave her apartment. Projects delayed because she was having panic attacks. It became clear that the environment at Meridian wasn't conducive to her mental health. So you fired her, Marcus said flatly. So I made the difficult decision to end her employment, Dr. Morrison corrected. I did it because I genuinely believed it was best for her. The pressure at Meridian was exacerbating her condition. She needed time to focus on her health, not on billable hours and client demands. How noble of you, I said. Destroying someone's career for their own good. I didn't destroy your career, Emma. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Your illness was destroying it. I made the call before things got even worse. You labeled me as emotionally volatile in my official file. Do you know what that did to me? I couldn't get another job in consulting. Couldn't get a reference. Couldn't even explain what happened without violating the NDA you made me sign. The NDA protected both parties. It protected the firm. It kept me quiet about the fact that you fired me for having a disability. It made sure I couldn't talk about how Meridian handles mental health issues among its employees. I turned to Marcus. That's why I didn't tell you the whole truth. Because I couldn't. Legally, I was bound to silence. And personally, I was so humiliated, so convinced that I really was everything she'd written in that report, that I couldn't bear for you to know. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, we should leave. Marcus, Dr. Morrison started. No. He held up a hand. This is completely inappropriate. You should have disclosed your prior relationship with Emma the moment we walked in. This is an ethics violation, isn't it? Dr. Morrison's face flushed. I should have, she admitted. You're right. I should have refused to see you the moment I realized who Emma was. I thought maybe I could help. I thought maybe this was an opportunity to what? I demanded. To absolve yourself? To prove that you're not the person who ruined my life? To make amends, she said quietly. Emma, you have to understand. Leaving Meridian, what happened to you, it's haunted me. It's part of why I left consulting and went back to school for psychology. I wanted to understand better, to help people in crisis instead of viewing them as liability risks. How convenient that your personal growth got to happen on the timeline of your choosing, I said. While I spent 4 years thinking I was fundamentally broken. Marcus's hand touched my elbow. Come on, we're leaving. For once, I didn't argue with him. I let him guide me toward the door, my legs feeling shaky and uncertain beneath me. Emma, wait. Dr. Morrison stood. Please, I have something I need to tell you. Something about what really happened at Meridian. I paused in the doorway. Against my better judgment, I turned back. What happened, I said. There's nothing to add. There is, she insisted. The termination wasn't my decision alone. I was pressured by senior partners. And there were other factors. Complications that you didn't know about. Things I couldn't tell you then because of my own confidentiality obligations. More secrets, I said. Perfect. That's exactly what this situation needs. Emma, please. There was something desperate in her voice now. I know I handled things badly. I know I failed you. But if you'll give me a chance to explain, no. The word came out firm and final. You had your chance 4 years ago. You made your decision then. I don't owe you the opportunity to feel better about it now. We left. Marcus and I walked down that hallway with its inoffensive art, through the waiting room with its lavender scent, out into the parking structure where the late afternoon sun was slanting through the concrete pillars. Neither of us spoke until we were in the car. Did you know? Marcus asked finally, his hands gripping the steering wheel. When we booked with her, did you know who she was? No. I laughed and it came out slightly hysterical. She changed her last name. Used to be Chen, Catherine Chen. I didn't make the connection to Dr. Catherine Morrison. Jesus. Marcus scrubbed a hand over his face. What are the odds? In a city this size? With all the therapists available? Astronomical. I leaned my head back against the seat. Maybe the universe has a sense of humor after all. This is... Marcus trailed off. I don't even know what this is. It's a mess, I supplied. It's a catastrophically complicated mess, and I'm sorry you got dragged into it. He was quiet for a moment. Then, why didn't you tell me the truth? Not about her specifically, but about the firing. About all of it. Because I was ashamed, I said simply. Because I'd spent 6 years building a career, and then in one moment, one panic attack in front of clients, it all fell apart. Because I convinced myself that if you knew the real story, you'd see me the way she saw me. The way I saw myself, as someone who was too broken to function in the real world. That's not how I see you, isn't it? I turned to look at him. You called my panic attacks attention-seeking. You said I was using them to avoid responsibility. That sounds a lot like too broken to function to me. Marcus started the car but didn't put it in gear. We sat there in the parking structure, the engine running, both of us staring straight ahead. I shouldn't have said those things, he said finally. Not like that. I'm frustrated, Emma. I'm scared. I don't know how to help you, and I feel like I'm failing at being what you need. But that doesn't excuse dismissing your pain as manipulation. You're not wrong about everything, I admitted. I have avoided things. I have let my anxiety run my life. I have made you carry too much of the burden. I don't know how to be different. I've tried medications, therapy, meditation, exercise. I've tried everything the doctors suggest. And I'm still this person who falls apart in grocery stores and can't attend company dinners without having a meltdown. Maybe, Marcus said slowly. We both need to be more honest. About all of it. About what I'm feeling. About what you're dealing with. About whether this marriage is actually working. The words hung in the air between us. Whether this marriage is actually working. The question I'd been too afraid to ask, spoken out loud in the artificial lighting of a parking garage. Is that what you want? I asked. To talk about whether we should stay together? I don't know what I want, Marcus said. A month ago, I would have said I wanted to fix this. To find a way through. But after today, Emma, there's so much I didn't know. So many layers of secrets and pain that you've been carrying alone. And I'm not sure if that's because you didn't trust me enough to share, or because I didn't create an environment where you felt safe sharing. Probably both, I said. Probably it's both of us failing in different ways. Marcus put the car in reverse and started backing out of the space. We should find a different therapist. Someone who doesn't have a pre-existing relationship with either of us. Agreed. I paused, although part of me wonders if what just happened was actually helpful. Like maybe we needed someone who could call us both on our shit. That wasn't calling us on our shit. Emma. That was a massive conflict of interest wrapped in 4 years of unprocessed trauma. He wasn't wrong. We drove home in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The city slid past the windows, familiar streets, familiar landmarks, the whole geography of a life we'd built together. A life that was suddenly feeling a lot less stable than it had this morning. When we pulled into our driveway, Marcus turned off the car but didn't get out immediately. I need some time, he said. To think about all of this. About what I learned today, about where we go from here. Okay, I said. Because what else could I say? I'm going to stay at Todd's for a few days. Just to get some space, clear my head. The panic that rose in my chest this time was different. Not the physiological storm of a panic attack, but the sharp, clean fear of losing something important. Of watching the foundation of my life crack and split. Marcus, it's not forever, he said quickly. It's just, I need to process. And I think you probably do too. He was right. I knew he was right. But that didn't make it hurt any less. I got out of the car and walked to our front door, my front door, since I'd bought this house with my savings from Meridian before we got married. Back when I still had savings. Back when I was still the person I'd been before everything fell apart. Inside, the house was exactly as we'd left it that morning. Coffee mugs in the sink. Marcus's jacket draped over a chair. The Sunday crossword puzzle half finished on the kitchen table. All the small, mundane details of a marriage, a life, a partnership that was now apparently on pause, while we both figured out if we wanted to keep trying. I sank onto the couch and let myself cry. Not the panicked, gasping tears of an anxiety attack, but something deeper. Grief, maybe, for the career I'd lost, for the person I used to be, for the marriage that was cracking under the weight of secrets and shame and untreated pain. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emma, this is Kate Morrison. I got your number from the intake form. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but please, if you'll let me, I'd like to explain what really happened at Meridian. There are things you don't know, things that might change how you see what happened. I understand if you're not interested, but I'm asking anyway. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. The part of me that was angry, rightfully, justifiably angry, wanted to delete it, to block her number and never think about Catherine Morrison again. But there was another part, smaller and more uncertain, that wondered what she could possibly have to say. What other factors and complications she'd mentioned. What secrets she'd been carrying that paralleled my own. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I set the phone down and sat in the silence of my empty house, trying to figure out what I wanted. Not what Marcus wanted, not what Dr. Morrison wanted, not what anyone else thought I should do, what I wanted. The problem was, I had no idea. 4 years ago, when I'd walked out of Meridian Consulting Group for the last time, I'd thought I knew who I was. A failed consultant. A person whose mental illness made her a liability. Someone who needed to fade into the background and try not to be too much of a burden on anyone. Then I'd met Marcus, and I'd thought maybe I could be someone else. Someone's wife. Someone who could build a smaller, quieter life. Someone who didn't need career success as long as she had partnership and love. But that person was failing too. My marriage was fracturing under the weight of all the things I couldn't do, couldn't be, couldn't handle. So who was I supposed to be now? The phone buzzed again. Another text. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me tell you the truth. About why you were really fired. About what was happening at Meridian that you didn't see. About decisions that were made behind closed doors that affected your life without your knowledge. You deserve to know, Emma. You deserve to know 4 years ago. I can't change that I didn't tell you then, but I can tell you now. If you'll let me, I picked up the phone. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was probably a terrible idea. Opening up communication with Kate Morrison, inviting more complications into a situation that was already impossibly tangled. The smart thing would be to block her number, find a new therapist, focus on salvaging my marriage. But when had I ever done the smart thing? I typed, tomorrow, 10 a.m., the coffee shop on Meridian Street. You have 30 minutes to explain. Then I never want to hear from you again. The response came almost immediately. I'll be there. Thank you, Emma. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I set the phone down and looked around my empty house. Tomorrow I would meet with the woman who had destroyed my career. Tonight, my husband was packing a bag to stay somewhere else because he needed space from me. And somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, I was supposed to figure out who I was and what I wanted my life to look like. No pressure. I laughed, actually laughed, at the absurdity of it all. Then I got up, found the bottle of wine Marcus kept for special occasions, and poured myself a glass. If I was going to have a breakdown, I might as well be comfortable while doing it. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Another day ending. Another night beginning. And tomorrow, maybe, some answers to questions I hadn't even known to ask. I raised my glass to the empty room. To honesty, I said aloud. And to whatever the hell happens next. The house didn't answer back. But then again, I hadn't really expected it to. The coffee shop on Meridian Street was one of those aggressively trendy places with exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and a chalkboard menu that required a degree in artisanal coffee culture to decipher. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a plain black coffee, and claimed a table in the back corner where I could see the door. My hands were shaking. Not the violent tremor of a panic attack, but the fine vibration of someone running on 3 hours of sleep and pure anxiety. I'd spent most of the night lying awake, alternating between rage at Kate Morrison and curiosity about what she could possibly say that would matter after 4 years. Marcus had texted around midnight. Made it to Todd's. Hope you're okay. We'll talk soon, I hadn't responded. What was there to say? Thanks for abandoning me after the worst therapy session in human history. Sorry my entire life is built on shame and secrets? Please come home because I'm terrified of being alone? All true. None helpful. At 9:58, Kate Morrison walked through the door. She wasn't wearing her therapist uniform. No professional blazer, no reading glasses, no carefully neutral expression. Instead, she wore jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking more like the person I remembered from Meridian than the composed Dr. Morrison from yesterday. She saw me immediately and walked over, carrying nothing but her phone and her keys. No briefcase, no notebook. Just her. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting down across from me without asking permission. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, needing something to hold on to. You have 30 minutes. Start talking. Kate took a breath, and for a moment she looked like she might lose her nerve. Then something hardened in her face. A decision made. You weren't fired because of your panic attacks, she said. Not really. That was the excuse, the official reason we put in the paperwork. But the truth is more complicated. How reassuring. Do you remember David Thornton? Senior partner, head of the corporate restructuring division? I nodded slowly. David Thornton was a legend at Meridian, one of the founding partners, responsible for some of the firm's biggest accounts. I'd met him maybe 3 times in my 6 years there, always in passing, always in meetings too important for someone at my level. You caught his attention, Kate said quietly. About 8 months before you were terminated. He started requesting you for projects, wanted you in meetings, said you had exceptional analytical capabilities. At first, I thought it was good for your career. Mentor interest from a senior partner is gold in consulting. Something cold settled in my stomach. But it wasn't mentorship. No. Kate's jaw tightened. He started asking you to dinner meetings, one-on-one strategy sessions, late-night work sessions in his office. Do you remember? I did. Vaguely. There had been a period where David Thornton seemed to take an interest in my career development. Dinner meetings at expensive restaurants. Weekend strategy sessions. He'd told me he saw partner potential in me, that he wanted to groom me for leadership. I'd been flattered, naive, 28 years old and desperate to prove myself. I started, then stopped. Nothing happened. He never crossed a line. Because you were too anxious, Kate said, and there was something like bitterness in her voice. Your panic attacks started getting worse around that time, remember? You couldn't make some of those late meetings. You'd have anxiety attacks before the dinner sessions. Your body was trying to tell you something your conscious mind hadn't figured out yet. The room felt too warm suddenly. What are you saying? I'm saying David Thornton has a pattern. You weren't the first young female consultant he targeted, and you weren't the last. Kate leaned forward. 3 women before you, all brilliant, all promising, all developed sudden performance issues and left the firm within a year of catching his attention. Why didn't anyone stop him? Because he's David Thornton. Because he brings in $40 million a year. Because he's careful. Nothing that could be proven. Nothing explicit. Just inappropriate attention that somehow always results in talented women leaving. Kate's hands clenched on the table. I tried to protect you. I started assigning you to projects he wasn't involved in. I stopped including you in meetings he attended. I thought if I could just keep you away from him until he lost interest. But then I had the panic attack during the client presentation. During his client presentation, Kate corrected. The biggest pitch of the quarter. You froze in front of his most important clients, and it gave him the ammunition he needed. He came to me that night and said you were a liability. Said your mental health issues were affecting the firm's reputation. Said if I didn't handle it, he would. I felt like I might be sick. So you fired me. So I made a choice. Kate's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I could let him handle it, which would have meant not just termination but a black mark on your record so damaging you'd never work in consulting again. He wanted to make an example of you. Or I could do it myself, quietly, with a severance package and an NDA that would keep the details private. That's why the NDA, I whispered. You weren't protecting the firm. You were protecting me. I was trying to protect you while also protecting my own job and the jobs of everyone else in my department. David made it clear, if I didn't terminate you, he'd push for a full investigation into my management decisions. He'd claim I'd been covering for your incompetence. He'd dismantle my entire division, Kate's voice cracked. I chose to sacrifice one person to save everyone else. And I've regretted it every single day since. The coffee shop sounds, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the indie folk music playing overhead, all seemed very far away. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why did you let me think I was fired for being too emotional? Because David was watching. Because he insisted on reviewing all termination paperwork. Because if I'd told you the truth, you might have tried to fight it, and then he would have destroyed you completely. Kate reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. I wrote that report to satisfy him. Every word about emotional volatility and inability to handle pressure. I hated writing it. But it was the price of getting you out with your dignity somewhat intact. My dignity, I repeated flatly. Kate, I spent 4 years thinking I was broken. Thinking my anxiety made me worthless. Thinking I deserved to lose everything. I know. Tears were sliding down her face now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought protecting you from the full truth would be kinder. I didn't realize how much damage those words would do. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. 4 years. 4 years of carrying that termination report like a stone in my chest. 4 years of believing I was exactly what she'd written. Too unstable, too emotional, too much of a liability for the professional world. And it had all been a lie. A necessary lie, maybe, but a lie nonetheless. What happened to the other women? I asked. Kate wiped her eyes. I tracked them down after I left Meridian. 2 are working at smaller firms, good positions, but not what they could have been. 1 left consulting entirely, went to grad school for something completely different. The last one, she attempted suicide 6 months after leaving. She survived, thank God, but it took years of therapy for her to recover. The weight of that settled over us both. Is he still there? I asked. Still doing this? Yes. I reported him when I left, filed a formal complaint with the board, provided documentation of the pattern, names of the women affected. They conducted an investigation that lasted 3 weeks and concluded there was insufficient evidence of misconduct. Kate's voice was hard. David Thornton is too valuable to hold accountable. So you became a therapist. So I realized I couldn't work in an industry that valued profit over people. That let powerful men destroy talented women and called it business. Kate looked at me steadily. I went back to school, got my doctorate in clinical psychology, specialized in workplace trauma and anxiety disorders. I wanted to understand what I'd failed to understand when I was your supervisor. How trauma manifests. How institutional betrayal compounds mental health issues. How the things we do to protect people can actually harm them more. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I asked. That my suffering contributed to your personal growth? No. Kate's voice was quiet but firm. Nothing makes this better. I destroyed your career and your mental health to save my own position. I prioritized the institution over the individual. I convinced myself I was doing the lesser evil when really I was just choosing the easier path. There's no redemption arc here, Emma. Just the reality that I failed you. And I've spent 4 years trying to become someone who wouldn't make that same choice again. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm. People ordered drinks. Laptops hummed. Someone laughed at something on their phone. Why tell me now? I finally asked. Why not just refuse to see us yesterday, recommend another therapist, keep your secrets? Because when you walked into my office with Marcus, I saw an opportunity. Not to absolve myself, I don't think that's possible. But to actually help you, the way I should have helped you 4 years ago. Kate leaned forward. Emma, everything Marcus said yesterday about your panic attacks being attention-seeking, about you avoiding responsibility, those weren't his original thoughts. Those were echoes of what I wrote in your termination report. My blood went cold. What? You told him you were fired. He found the paperwork. He read what I wrote about you, and he internalized it. He started seeing your legitimate mental health condition through the lens of my professional assessment. An assessment I wrote to satisfy a predator, not because it was true. Oh my God. The pieces clicked together. That's why he changed. After he found the report, he started being less patient, more dismissive. He thinks his skepticism is justified because a clinical evaluation backed it up. He doesn't know that evaluation was falsified to protect both you and me from something worse. Kate's expression was intense. That's why I took the session yesterday even though I shouldn't have. Because I saw a chance to undo some of the damage I caused. To tell Marcus the truth about your condition. That it's real, that it's valid, that you're not manipulating him. By outing yourself as my former supervisor and creating the most complicated therapeutic situation imaginable? I didn't plan it, Kate admitted. I should have disclosed immediately. But I saw you struggling, and I saw him dismissing you, and I just reacted, fell back into supervisor mode. Tried to protect you the way I should have protected you before. By defending me? By telling the truth. Finally. Kate pulled out her phone and scrolled through something. I've already reported yesterday's session to the ethics board. I'll face professional consequences, probably a suspension, maybe worse. But I documented everything I told you today. About David Thornton, about the pattern, about why I really terminated you. It's all on record now. Why would you do that? I asked. That could destroy your career. Because some things are more important than careers. Kate looked at me and I saw something raw in her expression. I've watched what hiding the truth does to people. I've seen it in my patients, the way secrets corrode from the inside, the way unacknowledged trauma compounds. I did that to you, Emma. I gave you a trauma and then made you carry it alone. I can't undo that, but I can stop perpetuating it. My coffee had gone cold. I hadn't taken a sip in 10 minutes. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked. How does knowing this change anything? It changes what you believe about yourself, Kate said. You weren't fired for being too emotional. You were fired because a powerful man wanted you and you didn't comply. And your anxiety, your body's natural response to an unsafe situation, gave him the excuse he needed. Your panic attacks weren't a weakness. They were a warning system trying to protect you. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew about myself. For 4 years, I continued, and my voice was shaking now. I've been telling myself I deserved what happened. That if I'd just been stronger, more professional, less emotional, I could have kept my career. And you're telling me that was never true? Never, Kate said firmly. You were talented and brilliant, and you had every right to be at Meridian. What happened to you was institutional betrayal, not personal failure. I put my head in my hands. The relief was overwhelming and terrible all at once. Relief that I wasn't broken, terrible because I'd spent so long believing I was. Emma. Kate's voice was gentle. I can't give you back the career you lost. I can't undo 4 years of self-blame, but I can tell you, as both your former supervisor and as a psychologist, that you deserve to know the truth, and you deserve to build a life that isn't defined by someone else's lies. I looked up at her. What about Marcus? What about him? He read that report. He thinks I'm exactly what you wrote. How do I explain this to him? Kate was quiet for a moment. I can talk to him if you want. Explain what I explained to you. But Emma, you need to decide if that's a marriage worth saving. Because even if Marcus understands the context now, he still said those things yesterday. He still dismissed your pain as attention-seeking. That's not just about the report. That's about who he is and how he responds when things get difficult. She wasn't wrong. I don't know if I have the energy to save a marriage, I admitted. I've spent 4 years just trying to survive, trying to make myself small enough, quiet enough, manageable enough that someone would want to keep me. I don't know how to be anything else. Then maybe, Kate said softly, it's time to stop making yourself small, time to take up space again, to be loud and complicated and difficult if that's what being yourself requires. Easy for you to say. You're not the one with panic disorder. No, but I am someone who spent years making myself small to fit in a toxic industry, who compromised my values to keep my position, who chose institutional approval over individual integrity. Kate's smile was sad. We both built cages for ourselves, Emma. Mine was just more socially acceptable. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Can we talk? I've been thinking about yesterday. I showed Kate the screen. What do I tell him? Tell him the truth, all of it. And then see how he responds. Because you deserve someone who hears I have panic disorder and thinks, how can I support you? Not, you're being manipulative. And if he can't be that person, then you'll survive without him. Just like you survived losing Meridian. Just like you've survived everything else. Kate stood up. You're stronger than you think, Emma. Stronger than I gave you credit for 4 years ago. She left cash on the table for a coffee she never ordered. And then she was gone. I sat there for a long time staring at Marcus's text, thinking about everything Kate had told me. Thinking about 4 years of believing I was broken when really I'd been betrayed. Finally, I typed, yes, let's talk. Come home at 6, then I made another decision. I opened my laptop and started writing. When Marcus arrived home at 6:15, I was sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. Printouts of articles about workplace harassment. My termination paperwork from Meridian. Notes I'd written during my conversation with Kate. Hey, he said cautiously. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I'm going to be. He sat down across from me, looking at the papers spread across the table. What's all this? The truth, I said. About what really happened at Meridian. About why I was fired. About what Kate Morrison told me this morning. I walked him through it. All of it. David Thornton's pattern of predatory behavior. Kate's choice to terminate me quietly rather than let him destroy me publicly. The falsified report that Marcus had found and internalized. The 4 years I'd spent believing I deserved my own destruction. Marcus listened without interrupting. His face went through several expressions. Shock, anger, confusion, and something that might have been guilt. Why didn't she tell you this before? He asked when I finished, because she was protecting herself. And honestly protecting me too, in a way. If David Thornton had known I was aware of his pattern, he might have come after me even harder. I looked at Marcus steadily. But that doesn't excuse what she did. Just like understanding why you said those things yesterday doesn't excuse the harm they caused. I'm sorry, Marcus said immediately. Emma, I'm so sorry. I read that report and I believed it. I thought it was an objective professional assessment. It was a document written by a woman under pressure to satisfy a predator. It had nothing to do with who I actually am or what I'm actually capable of. I pulled out one of the papers I'd printed. I called my old colleague from Meridian today. Jessica Chen, do you remember me mentioning her? Marcus nodded. She left 6 months after I did. Had a breakdown, according to the official story. Turns out David Thornton had been targeting her too. I slid the paper across to him. I spent today tracking down the other women Kate mentioned. We're talking to an employment lawyer tomorrow. All of us, Marcus's eyes widened. You're going to sue Meridian? I'm going to do what I should have done 4 years ago. Fight back. Not just for me, but for every woman whose career he's destroyed. For every person who's been told their trauma response is a professional liability. I felt something fierce rising in my chest. I spent 4 years making myself smaller. Being quiet. Being manageable. I'm done with that. Emma. Marcus looked down at the table. I don't know what to say. Say whether you can handle this. Because I'm not going back to being the person I was last week. I'm going to pursue legal action against one of the biggest consulting firms in the country. I'm going to see a real therapist who doesn't have a conflict of interest. I'm going to work on my panic disorder with actual medical support instead of just trying to white-knuckle my way through life. I took a breath. And I need to know if you can be my partner in that, or if you need to be somewhere else. The silence stretched between us. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in months. I haven't been a good partner, he said finally. I've been frustrated and resentful, and I've taken it out on you instead of dealing with my own feelings. Reading that report, it gave me permission to see your struggles as character flaws instead of medical issues. And that's not okay? No, I agreed. It's not. But I don't want to leave. His voice was quiet but certain. I want to be better. I want to be the person who supports you instead of dismissing you. I don't know how to do that yet. Then we figure it out together, I said. With actual professional help. With honesty. With both of us showing up as full, complicated people instead of trying to fit into neat little boxes. I can do that. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. I want to do that. We sat there in our kitchen, holding hands across a table covered in evidence of past trauma. And it felt like something shifting. Not fixing, nothing was fixed yet. But shifting, making space for something new. I talked to a lawyer today too, Marcus said. For myself. About Meridian and potential complicity in Thornton's behavior. Turns out if they knew about the pattern and didn't act, the company could face serious liability. I stared at him. You called a lawyer? After you told me about meeting Kate, I started doing research. Looking into workplace harassment law, institutional liability, falsified documentation. He squeezed my hand. I can't undo not believing you. But I can believe you now. I can use my business knowledge to help build your case. If you want that. Something loosened in my chest. Not trust, not yet. But possibility. The possibility that this marriage might survive. That we might find our way back to each other through honesty instead of pretense. I want that, I said. 3 months later, I sat in a conference room at a different law firm, surrounded by 4 other women. Jessica Chen was on my right. Rachel Morrison, no relation to Kate, on my left. Across from us, 2 other women whose names I was still learning but whose stories I knew intimately, stories of inappropriate attention, escalating pressure, and sudden terminations that destroyed promising careers. Our lawyer, Margaret Santos, was presenting our case to representatives from Meridian Consulting Group, a class action lawsuit for workplace harassment, wrongful termination, and institutional failure to protect employees. The Meridian lawyers looked uncomfortable. They should be. As you can see in the documentation, Margaret said, her voice cool and professional. We have testimony from 5 former employees detailing a pattern of predatory behavior by senior partner David Thornton spanning 7 years. We have evidence that multiple managers reported concerns to upper management and were ignored or silenced. We have documentation of falsified performance reviews used to justify terminations of women who rejected Mr. Thornton's advances. One of the Meridian lawyers cleared his throat. These allegations are serious, but these aren't allegations, I interrupted. These are facts. David Thornton targeted young female employees. The company knew. The company chose to protect his revenue stream instead of its people. And now you're going to pay for that choice. There was something powerful in speaking truth after years of silence. Something healing in sitting beside women who'd survived the same institutional betrayal and saying, "We will not be quiet anymore." The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, Meridian's lawyers were talking settlement figures. Not admissions of guilt, never that. But money. Enough money to acknowledge that something had happened. Even if they wouldn't say what. We left the conference room together. 5 women who'd been told we were too emotional, too unstable, too much of a liability. 5 women who'd found each other and decided to be exactly that much of a liability. Drinks? Jessica suggested. To celebrate not backing down? I can't, I said. I have therapy. But rain check? Therapy with the infamous Dr. Morrison? Rachel asked with a grin. I laughed. God, no. Dr. Morrison lost her license over the ethics violation. But she sent me a referral to someone good. Someone who specializes in anxiety disorders and workplace trauma. How do you feel about that? Jessica asked. About what happened to her? I thought about it. Kate Morrison had lost her practice, her license, possibly her career. She'd sacrificed her professional life to tell the truth about what had happened at Meridian. I feel like she finally made the right choice, I said. 4 years late, but still. The right choice? Dr. Sarah Chen's office was nothing like Kate Morrison's had been. No floor-to-ceiling windows, no leather furniture, no carefully curated art. Just a comfortable space with soft lighting and a therapy dog named Biscuit who sat on my feet during sessions and provided unconditional positive regard. How are you doing with the lawsuit? Dr. Chen asked during our session that evening. Good. Scary. Empowering. I reached down to pet Biscuit. I had a panic attack yesterday thinking about the depositions coming up. But I wrote it out. Used the grounding techniques. Didn't let it stop me. That's significant progress, Dr. Chen noted. 6 months ago, you would have let that panic attack convince you to drop the case entirely. She was right. 6 months ago, before the disastrous therapy session with Kate, before learning the truth, before deciding to fight back, I would have seen that panic attack as proof I couldn't handle this. Now I understood it for what it was, my body processing real fear about a genuinely difficult situation. Not proof of weakness, just proof I was human. Marcus and I had a good week, I continued. We're learning to communicate better. He's reading books about anxiety, came to a support group meeting with me, actually listened when I explained what a panic attack feels like from the inside. And how do you feel about the relationship? Hopeful, I said honestly. We're not fixed. There's still resentment on both sides, still patterns we're trying to break. But we're trying, actually trying, not just going through the motions. Dr. Chen made a note. You've made remarkable progress, Emma. When you first came to see me, you described yourself as broken. How do you see yourself now? I thought about it. About the woman I'd been 6 months ago, scared, convinced of her own inadequacy, trying desperately to be small enough to be acceptable. And the woman I was becoming, someone who took up space, who fought back, who understood that her anxiety was a condition she had, not a definition of who she was. I see myself as someone who survived something terrible, I said. Someone who was betrayed by institutions and people she trusted, who internalized that betrayal for years, and who's finally learning that none of it was her fault. I see someone who's still scared a lot of the time, but who does things anyway. Who has panic attacks and grounding techniques and medication and a support system, someone who's complicated and messy and working on it? That's a beautiful self-image, Dr. Chen said gently. It's an honest one, I corrected. For the first time in 4 years, it's honest. That night, Marcus and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. But we moved around each other in the kitchen with an ease that had been missing for a long time. He told me about his day at work. I told him about the therapy session. We talked about the lawsuit, about our plans for the weekend, about whether we should get a dog like Biscuit. Normal conversation, comfortable, real. After dinner, we sat on the couch together. Not watching TV, not on our phones, just sitting. I'm proud of you, Marcus said. For everything you're doing. The lawsuit, the therapy, all of it. Thank you for staying, I said. For being willing to do the work, too. I love you, he said. Not the version of you that you thought you had to be. The actual you. The one who has panic attacks and fights corporate lawyers and teaches me about grounding techniques. That's the person I want to be married to. I leaned my head on his shoulder. That's good. Because that's the only person I know how to be anymore. We sat there as the evening faded into night, two imperfect people trying to build something honest together. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined when we got married. It was better, messier, more complicated, more real. My phone buzzed. An email from Margaret Santos, our lawyer. Meridian has offered a preliminary settlement. $2.3 million to be split among all plaintiffs, plus mandatory company-wide harassment training and the implementation of new reporting procedures. They're also agreeing to remove David Thornton's involvement in hiring and personnel decisions. No admission of wrongdoing, but significant changes. Think about what you want to do. We can push for more, or we can accept this as a victory. Your call. I showed Marcus the email. What do you think? He asked. I considered it. I think it's not enough money. Not enough accountability. Not an admission of what they did wrong. But it's something. It's David Thornton losing power. It's Meridian having to acknowledge they need to change. It's 5 women getting validation that what happened to them mattered. I looked at Marcus. Is it enough? That's not my call to make, he said. It's yours. Whatever you decide, I support it. I thought about the last 6 months. About Kate Morrison losing her license to tell the truth. About 5 women finding each other and refusing to be silent. About learning that my panic attacks were my body trying to protect me, not proof I was broken. About becoming someone who fought back instead of making herself small. I want to talk to the other women, I said finally. See what they think. But I'm leaning toward acceptance. Not because it's enough, but because we made Meridian blink. We made them acknowledge there was a problem. That feels like a victory, even if it's not perfect. Then that's what you should do, Marcus said. I drafted a response to Margaret, copying the other plaintiffs. Let's talk tomorrow about the offer. I think we should consider accepting, but I want everyone's input. We're in this together. Responses came quickly. Agreement. Relief. The shared recognition that sometimes progress means accepting an imperfect win and using it as a foundation for future change. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No nightmares about termination meetings. No anxiety about the next panic attack. Just sleep, deep and dreamless and healing. In the morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and Marcus already awake beside me, reading. Good morning, he said, looking up from his book. Good morning, I replied. And for the first time in 4 years, I meant it. The panic attacks didn't disappear. My anxiety disorder didn't magically cure itself. The trauma of what had happened at Meridian would take years to fully process. But I was facing it all honestly now, not as evidence of personal failure, but as the natural consequence of institutional betrayal and the long road back to wholeness. I was Emma Chen, former consultant. Current survivor, future uncertain but no longer defined by other people's lies about who I was. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.